Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. As we're gonna wait until the room fills up, we're seeing a lot of folks are waiting in the waiting room. They'll be floating in slowly. So we'll be starting roughly about, call it to be exact, 59 seconds. We'll be right back. All right, well, looks like we got someone dialing in from Germany. This is gonna be pretty cool. All right. So what time is it in Germany right now? Probably what, 7 p.m.? Well, good. Looks like we've got a pretty full room of audience. So first, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us virtually. It sounds like we got friends internationally from Germany, Canada. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Carlson Choi from Slide today. So today we're gonna actually have a pretty interesting session. We got some really good, deep technical folks in the room. Will be joining us to talking about partnership between Slide and ScalePad. And on the next slide, I can kind of show you about the audience and I will get the cast of character, I call them here. I myself, I'm from Slide, overseeing operation and the GTM side of the equation. But I'm not the star in this call. It's actually going to be Sergio, Tulsi, both one from Slide, the other folks from ScalePad. And then we also got the main attraction at the end is Charles Love, one of a great partner who have experienced through the, I would say, the journey of this partnership from the beginning. So at the end of the session, you're gonna, this opportunity, you guys hear a little about each of the company. You're gonna see a demo of this integration, the partnership, and most important, you're gonna hear from Charles. We're gonna do a little fun fireside chat and experience, and then we'll wrap it all up at the end with a nice Q&A for you, open up for the audience to ask any question you want. So with that said, I will hand it over to Sergio and kick us off.
Absolutely. Well, hi, everyone. Sergio Espinoza, head of product here at Slide. And I wanted to start off by introducing you all to a little bit of the Slide team who helped build this product. So as you can see, these are probably a few names you know. Austin and Michael Fass, our founders, Phil Heckel, our head of engineering, Carlson and myself. And one thing you'll notice pretty much across the board is we all come from a company we all know and love, Datto. So we all essentially have that background in backup, and that's really an area we wanted to make sure we could focus on. So with that, I'll switch over a little bit about our company. So Slide has one main focus, and that's that we're a backup company. That is our main vision. We want to be a backup company. And within that, we have four main pillars. We want to be MSP first. So we will never sell behind your back directly to the customer. We always will be channel only. The MSP is first and foremost to us. Security. Backup is part of your security stack. And we wanted to make sure that at all moments, not only is it a core part of that stack, but also that it is inherently secure. So as we go through the demo, you'll see some areas where it's just natively built in. We have encryption by default. We do everything we can to make sure the environment is secure. Like any good, I think, product company should be, we are very product focused. So we're less focused on, or our main focus is on our engineering team and making sure that we're building the best product at all times, really making sure we're using the best hardware possible, building to the best standards possible. That's a tremendous focus for us, and you'll be able to, again, see that in the demo as well. And finally, the last portion I like to mention is we're very support oriented. So we believe it's incredibly important to have an organization that has a support team that you can call at any moment get the help you need, no having to like wait in line for somebody to pick up the phone. We want that to be a very human interaction, and we want to be there for you at any moment. So it's absolutely vital for us to have that support functionality. And then finally, I'll jump in a little bit about the product itself. So I'll start to talk about the Slide Z1. We do also have rack mount options, but so easiest place to talk about it. I mentioned a little bit earlier kind of that pedigree of the team. We may be a newer company, but we're at essentially retirement age in terms of BCDR engineering experience. And that is just engineering, not including any other function within the organization. That is just purely the developers. So quite a bit of experience from our team. The product was built completely from scratch, really just like absolutely clean room code base. So that means we really start with zero technical debt. We got to start from the ground up, learning from mistakes that we had learned in the past, and we got to avoid them, which is quite nice. What we're doing is it's a local appliance with replication to the Slide cloud. And what I mean by Slide cloud is that's going to a data center that we manage the rack within it. It's running on our hardware. We wanted to make sure we had control of that environment. It's block level backup. It's our belief that there's nothing really better than block level backup, so that's what we do. We do automated backup integrity verification. What you might know is screenshot verification. We do on every single backup. We have so much horsepower available that we can simply just do it all the time. You end up with instant virtualizations, file restores, image exports, absolutely what you need for protecting server environments. And then I mentioned a little bit about the security. On the security side, mandatory encryption, so including at rest, your data is always encrypted the entire time, and that doesn't take up any extra space. So there's nothing to enable any agent that is protected by Slide is automatically encrypted, again, including at rest, at transit, at all times it's protected. And doesn't take any extra space. You don't have to size in any special manner for that. And then finally, I always like to mention this. It's one of to me, the super cool things about us using our hardware, especially in our cloud, is we're using NVMe. So not only for the local appliance, all of our appliances, including our rack mounts, are using full NVMe PCI Gen 4 drives, but even our cloud is using NVMe PCI Gen 4 drives, which I think is pretty incredible. It's fantastic from a speed perspective. It's also an incredible feature to have from a reliability point of view. So NVMe drives just do not break as often as a spinner, and they happen to have the extra benefit that they're incredibly fast. So that was Slide, but one of the reasons we wanted to do this webinar is to really talk about this partnership that we have right now between Backup Radar and Slide. So happy to say Backup Radar was our first integration. We had met even before we had gone live as a company and said, we want to work with you. We want to kind of have an integration. We believe the Backup Radar product is absolutely incredible for anybody who's very focused on managed backup. So we wanted to make sure that relationship happens. In terms of the integration, the areas that we really focused on together as a group is we wanted to make sure that we're giving partners kind of the best speed overall. So we wanted to make sure that from especially the Slide side, our backups and restores are as fast as possible. But even next is an efficiency point of view, which also relates to speed, is your techs don't have to learn something new if they're using Backup Radar. They can use the existing, you can use the existing reports you have, you can use the existing dashboards that you have. Everything kind of happens in one place. So incredibly useful, especially if you have techs managing multiple backup solutions, which happens. We like that MSPs are able to standardize, our partners are able to standardize if they're using one product. So very nice that the report that you were sending before your clients, you don't really have to change it up at all. Your end users aren't really going to like when they have to get a new report that they have to get used to. It might be a slightly different time frame that they receive it on. So one of the nice things is you can keep everything standardized there. One of the incredible things that Backup Radar also gives us is compliance reporting. So that Backup Radar essentially already has built in, very nice to have. And overall, we just ended up with a seamless integration across both products. And one of the other things that Backup Radar brings to the house is extensive access to kind of all the PSA integrations. So if you're using Backup Radar, regardless of pretty much any PSA you're using, Backup Radar has an integration for it. And because we're integrated through Backup Radar, you have kind of the pick of the litter for whichever PSA you want to use. So with that, I'm going to move it over to Tulsi to talk a little bit more about Backup Radar.
All right. Thanks for that, Sergio. I'm going to share my screen, folks, and we will continue this conversation. All right. So, in a nutshell, more than likely you gathered this already. Backup Radar is an event aggregator. Our goal is to instrument data from over 300 different backup vendors because the reality is backup has been a cornerstone of your MSP from since day one, right? Got the first pillar of your RMM PSA. Backup happened to maybe be the third pillar. And of course, cybersecurity largely has been the fourth pillar for a while. So we know as you're going to market, you're likely going to be encountering a few things. Number one, dealing with existing backup solution, but the reality of things as well is you're acquiring new clients, and those clients might be coming in with existing backup technology. They might be coming in with existing data retention commitments. And it's not necessarily easy to perhaps switch them over to your favorite backup tool. Hence, why Backup Radar was created. I thought might be important for you to know that background. But our goal now is to actually instrument all of that data into a central view. You're certainly going to be seeing that here in a minute. And being able to actually auto-open tickets, auto-close those tickets out, auto-update them, and so forth with the leading PSAs. And we will actually cover what those are in a bit here. So at a high level, I thought this image really illustrate what Backup Radar is trying to do. And I think many of you are going to actually appreciate it as well. So those vendors, Backup Radar is simply consuming the data, right? Our goal at that point is to normalize the data across the board. Basically, for legacy folks that have been in an MSP well for over the years, you probably come to understand things like extract, transform, and load. That's really holistically what we are doing in the backend to make sure we normalize the data. At the end of the day, your client really doesn't care what backup vendors you're utilizing. They simply care to know, are their systems being protected? Is the data getting replicated to the offsite location? Is verifications and so on being performed? Backup Radar itself is a cloud-based offering. We don't necessarily hold any proprietary data of your environment. It's agentless. It's simply gathering telemetry data from the various sort of systems you might be leveraging for backups and ultimately surfacing that data through the console as well as various reports today. So with that said, let's jump right into the demonstration. We can actually take a look at a scenario here, both from Backup's Radar point of view, how you're going to want to utilize Backup Radar to monitor events, not only from Slide, but numerous other backup platforms out there. And then we can actually hop into the Slide tool and show you how you might want to handle a disaster recovery scenario in terms of actually spinning up a system potentially that might actually go wrong in terms of things like ransomware or system corruptions and so on, how easily it is to actually get a system back online. So starting the conversation here, I mean, this is ultimately going to be your center to the experience once you get into Backup Radar. And I think there's a few things that folks you need to actually be aware of. A lot of you as MSPs have things like monitors and TVs and so on in your office. Backup Radar can actually be on one of those boards. My feeling, and I think many of the folks feeling on this call, is backups need to actually be a central responsibility for everyone. It is that crucial. It's the last layer of defense for most organizations. So just know there is an ability to actually place that on our monitor. That way, everyone is accountable to know what's going on with clients' backups. But more importantly, for scenarios whereby maybe you have larger sort of clients out there in the market potentially need access to this tool so they can actually see what's going on with their backups. But even from a QBR standpoint, where potentially you now need to surface this data in those quarterly meetings or annual meetings, it helps solidify that relationship for your clients. Giving out a little more restoration, you know exactly what's going on, and you have proof in terms of showing almost in near real time what is going on with their data, again, across the various sort of life cycle of a client's backup, not only an initial backup, but things like replication and verifications and so forth. Honing it a little further here, we're going to get into something what we call the audit view. And I create a bit of scenario here, a little bit of a ridiculous one, but its goal is to demonstrate a few important points that I think it is important for you to know. for a single client, you may be leveraging best of breed technology, right? Not necessarily you're going to have a single vendor out there in the market that can potentially protect all workloads. I mean, in some cases, they certainly can, depends on the size and scope of that client and the workloads they might be running. But in reality, I mean, there is a diversity in terms of systems out there, legacy systems, legacy applications that potentially modern systems cannot protect as well. And going back down to a point that I mentioned earlier, dealing with things like license commitment, data retention, whereby, again, it might serve that client well to continue utilizing whatever system. So my favorite client here, Mario and Luigi's Pizza Palace. I mean, these folks happen to run a slew of systems. Of course, they have slide here. We're going to get into this. But you'll notice, I mean, there's a Red Store example here. There is an Axient example. There's a Veeam. There's a Datto example here. All of that data simply aggregate together from a single client view. And speaking about the workload, right? This could have easily be workstations, server infrastructure, could be SaaS-based systems like Microsoft Office or Salesforce or whatever else technology you might be typically protecting for that business, rendering in a simple view, where the data point that you need to make a decision is simply here, success, failures, and so on. What you might not be aware of is this light blue color, and this is really talking about one of the big value of something like Backup Radar, and even down into slide once we actually get over there into that product in a second, is simply want to uh, let you know an event's supposed to happen and it simply didn't happen, right? The sort of no news is good news scenario. And we all had that, right? You're busy, you're probably solving a lot of tickets within the PSA, you're actually working on project issues, you might be putting out other fires. Sometimes you make the false assumption, hey, we didn't hear back from our system, or so the assumption is everything is actually working. There was no tickets, there was no email alerts. We want to actually give you a bit visibility in terms of the blind side. More on that, we are super excited to work with Slide, them being the first vendor for this flyout menu, where we want to indicate with any of the systems now, this is information coming directly across the Slide API. We are at a glance now, I can have a little more details about the system. Of course, things like the operating system, version of, a potential version of things like the underlying OS on the platform that this machine is running on. And interestingly enough, as I'm simulating a bit of a failure, I did not necessarily want to execute ransomware in the system to go to that extent, but simply simulate a failure here in terms of showcasing this ticket creation. Slido is, aware enough to know that I simply power off that machine. And traditionally, systems will simply tell you, hey, the agent cannot connect. But there is additional guidance now coming across that API to give you a little more context as to maybe what potentially is going on in the client's infrastructure. Anytime we are bringing in data, of course, there's going to be API data coming right across. So in this case, the machine, the backup status, the error message that are getting shown across. If you're ever bringing in data via an email, because Backup Radar will both consume information via an API, as well as email provided by providers out there, we simply want to actually showcase those emails as well. For a lot of folks, I mean, this might look familiar to you in terms of a Veeam backup email that actually came right across there. The platform, of course, have a lot of capabilities to determine when and how tickets should be open. And this is really coming back down to the various sort of workloads that you have today, not because there is an issue getting created or an issue arising at workload, potentially you might need a ticket, right? So think about it from this point of view. You're backing up a user, a machine, or you're backing up Microsoft 365. Well, if you happen to have a failure on that side, if that happened to go by a day or 2 day, maybe in the third day, I really need to know about it. And this platform now can actually raise that ticket within, again, your PSA of choice, something like, Autotask, like say a BMS or Halo, Synchro, ServiceNow, or potential other platforms out there in terms of raising the ticket to your desire. Same thing for the updating of that ticket. Any additional alert that comes in, we simply append it to that ticket. So you're dealing with one ticket within the PSA that is constantly getting auto updated with any sort of future updates. Given that is, of course, is open. If that ticket is actually closed out by the technician, a new ticket will ultimately get created. But there is also the functionality for the platform now to go right back into the PSA on auto close that ticket as well. So that's a general sort of emphasis in terms of what Backup Radar is doing for you. Now, to take this further, heading back into that menu there on the side, there is further details again with the slide integration through Backup Radar we want to actually give to you. You'll notice we have the ability to actually, hyperlink into the appliance here. And if you ever want to see, well, what else this appliance is protecting, well, we're going to actually give you that right out of the gate here. The other systems is actually sitting on that appliance. And I simply can actually get into those systems as well to see further details. More on this, if I want to actually take a look at the appliance, right from here, this is going to transport me directly into the slide appliance. In this case, bringing that appliance online, providing me with a little more details. The systems, in this case, that is getting protected. Now, remember, we were seeing a system was failing earlier. So let's actually take a look at this in here in terms of restoring that system, right? So for folks that hasn't taken a look at slide before, promise a couple minutes here. I'm going to actually fly through a few features at a high level, but as you can tell, this thing is super fast. I've been in this backup space for the last 20 years. I have to use a lot of legacy systems. Funny enough, I started my career utilizing floppy disks to backup systems. Things, of course, in the last 20, 25 years has dramatically changed. And some of the underlying technology Sergio was referring to in terms of Gen 4 or PCI 4 NVMe drives make this system tremendously quick in not only backing up systems, but even the general performance of the console is tremendously fast. And you're going to get a sense of idea as we actually go through the various menu options. Basically out here, all the various sort of systems that you're backing up across your clients are simply going to list it here. You want to view that by client. You can view that on the individual boxes, or even actually group this by different customers if you actually wish. I usually like to get sometimes into the actual box itself because if I need to do for the setup, set up things like alerting, additional settings on how things are being backed up, or even additional alerts I might need to actually get report into Backup Radar. Maybe potentially I want to get more details from those emails beyond the API into Backup Radar. That is something configurable as well. And again, we're going to provide you with a mailbox in that tool where you can actually send in those additional alerts. Your snapshot across your various systems are all here, and of course, you can actually focus in on your systems. Now, the one that we're going to be powering on back is this database server. Historical snapshot is here, and any one of those items we, of course, can pick and do something very simple as browse the files and have a look at this, folks. Browsing the files, that's milliseconds in terms of actually bringing the C volume online, in terms of gaining access to any user files. And again, if a technician I receive a request in receiving some files or retrieving some files and sending it back to a user, I can instantly do that. Of course, there's some additional options with Samba, CIF shares, as well as a web dev option in terms of actually even giving the client access temporarily so they can browse and retrieve their own files. So a couple of fantastic restore options, right out of the gate, and I thought it's worth showing you how quick that was. Now, backing up here a second, in bringing a system online, right? Again, imagine we need to restore full services of that system. We got a couple options in here, right? We can restore the system on a slide box. I mean, preferably for latency reasons, you're going to want to do that. But you notice you also have the ability to actually leverage the slide cloud right out of the gate from the same menu. I'm not actually leaving the local console and navigate out into the cloud to actually do that work. I'm simply doing that from a single console. Again, as you're looking at this, think about some of these practical issues with getting technicians to jump through different sort of tools you might be doing when it comes to restoring data. I'm able to actually do this orchestration from a single console. So picking on my slide device, I mean, we're going to be testing this. I mean, you certainly have access to the full compute resource of the device if you wish to leverage all of that for a single VM. This is a sample VM, so I nowhere need anything that close. And even down to things like networking options, I can isolate that VM if I wish on a system. Maybe this is a ransomware sort of investigation I need to do. Want to preserve things like chain of custody. Slide is a perfect example to do that because leveraging in the back end snapshot and based technology we ensure those snapshot does not necessarily get itself modified. So you can ensure if you're dealing with things like an insurance vendor, can preserve that chain of custody, because that's going to be crucial to make sure that yes, nothing was actually tampered based on the data protected within the backup. Other options in terms of bridging the machines back to the local LAN and so on. So have a look at this again, folks. We are about to actually bring the system online. So again, a few seconds, getting the environment and the backend built, established, having the VM mounted at this point. And I know this is really small, it's tiny at the moment, but I want to say 20, 25 seconds at most it took for us to bring the system online. That's it. Machine is up and running. If this instance is back on the network, utilize your RMM, remote into the machine, continue, post-boot operation, making sure services are running, applications are accessible, network shares are available, whatever the case might be. But that's the goal, right? This is business continuity. The goal is to restore that system back on the network as quick as possible and restore operation for those users. Of course, depends on the scenario you're dealing with. There might be a few more things involved here, and I don't necessarily think we have time in this session to go through all of that, but hopefully that gives you a better idea in terms of the workflow through Backup Radar and Slide, right? Again, Backup Radar, we want this to give you the ability to actually have the sort of central pane of view within all the different technology that you're monitoring, being able to actually auto open those tickets, auto close them out, and so on, and get that event into the PSA, because that's where your technicians are living. But within doing any sort of investigation or monitoring through Backup Radar, again, you're dealing with multiple vendors here. Simply want to bring in some of the additional tooling at this point, make it easier for folks to actually jump into the BDR platform, perform any sort of restores, any sort of troubleshoot to get those machines back online. There's a couple things I think it's actually worth mentioning here as well, right? As part of us doing reporting, and you can schedule all sort of reports to get out to your clients, whether that might be a backup report, it might be a compliance type report, it can be a combination of the two, whereby maybe part of that MSA you establish with your client, hey, we can actually do some due diligence maybe once a quarter and do some sample verifications of your data. We can enter notes within Backup Radar. We can provide all of that as part of one comprehensive report back to the client. Again, perfect for those things like QBR, really try to establish back to those clients. We are actually doing a much more maybe beyond that MSA. Yes, we're meeting our obligation, but we are doing actually so much more for you overall. From this point of view, it doesn't really matter. Again, local backups, endpoint backups, different sort of journey of those backups, like the replication and verification. You can include all of those things here. You can add notes. You can make the report pretty. And again, think of it from the client's point of view. They look at this, they got it immediately. Yes, I can see the names of my systems. I can see based on the schedule, things are being protected and so forth. All right. Now, with that said, and showcasing the report, I think it's time for me to actually hand things back to you, Sergio. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually stop sharing here. And folks, yeah, we're gonna continue the conversation.
Yeah, and I'll pass it right over to Carlson to take over with the fireside chat with Charles.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, that was pretty awesome. I think I just want to tell you, Sergio, Tosi really did an amazing job on slide demo. He's really calling you out for a challenge. I'm going to say that publicly here. So this might be fight off at some point. That said, hey, thank you very much. It was a great, hopefully for those who joining the call who have never seen Slide, nor have you never seen Backup Radar, it gives you a kind of a good view of how each product works in its own, but how it works better together. That said, I actually brought a good friend of mine. I think we have worked together many years, and many of you might also know Charles himself. He has been with us at the beginning journey of Slide and also with this Backup Radar partnership here. So what I will do is I will let him do an introduction, about himself, and then we'll go right into a little fun fireside chat, sharing with a little journey, and then we'll go right into Q&A, including with Charles be available for the Q&A. So Charles, do a little intro here.
Yeah, I just want to say something. I was kind of laughing, like grinning ear to ear.
Yeah.
Tulsi from ScalePad just gave the slide demo. That should tell everybody on this call like I'm not bagging on Tulsi or ScalePad, right? But like the other vendor did the demo, right? So let that sink in for a second. If the vendor can do the demo, your guys can rock the software, no problems. So just
Yeah,
wanted to give him props to
good.
that.
Well, good. Thank you. You want to do a little intro about yourself, of your space?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Charles Love. I'm with Showtech Solutions out of Tampa, Florida. We're a managed, we're an MSP, IT provider that pretty much covers anywhere between the, Southeast to North America.
Yeah. Great. Well, so maybe we just kick off a little bit. I always love these, these side chat. It's never about the company you work for, right?
Yep.
For those who've been in the industry, honestly, you should probably know Charles. If you don't know him, then you might not be in the industry. You haven't been in enough shows. So, what would be lovely to have you share a little about your, I mean, honestly, your career journey, how you got yourself in the MSP space, and how you end up here at Showtech. Start.
Yep. So I've been doing this, God, since the 1900s, if you want to really think of it that way, right? Like, God, it makes me old. Back in the day, we weren't called MSPs, we were called VARs or resellers, things like that, right? But but I remember working with ArcServe and Backup Exec, and it was A versus B, right? And we were all talking about LTO tapes, right? Zip drives, things like
Yep.
that. We never really thought, and I happen to have a slide box on me right now, but we never
Ooh.
really thought about one of these little boxes just completely taking over the rooms of tapes that we used to have, right? So it's been amazing to see how this whole thing has changed from, hey guys, don't leave the tapes on top of the server, please go put it in another room or take them home, all those things, to now it's just, yeah, it just kind of works. It's magic, it's voodoo on the back end. All I know is a job runs and I can restore it if I need it, right? It's an amazing
Yep.
thing if you think about it, from the 1900s to today.
Yep. By the way, you said zip drive. I just want to remind those of you who does not know what a zip drive is a really amazing technology that lets you store, I think it was 100 meg,
Yep.
and then they went to the 250. Um, I actually was cleaning my garage and I found a couple of those. I showed to my daughter. She said, "What is that?" I go, "Well, it's about a couple of thousand of this to sit in your iPhone today," and it was
Yeah.
just blowing their mind.
Omega.
Yeah, I Omega. So, okay, from that front, at Showtech, give us a little bit of context. I mean, I think, as an MSP, you probably work with a lot of different tools, right? You probably have, RMM, EDR, backup, all different type of tools. Tell us a little bit how you kind of put together your best of breed stack, and what are the key component and attribute as you think about those.
Yeah, we have the whole alphabet soup, right? Everything you said, SOC, IDDR, da 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 da, da, just all the things, right? Um, and when back in the day when we were VARs and stuff, we had just started getting into RMM, and we thought that was going to be the end of it, right? Fast forward to today, there's like 7 or 8 things that we have to end up putting on an endpoint, right? Not only just to keep the end user secure, but for auditing purpose, for compliance purposes, maybe we're putting two-factor, or maybe we're putting all these things in play. The goal with all the alphabet soup that we put on customers' machines, we want to sleep at night, right? I like to lay my head down knowing that nobody's going to get into too much trouble, right? If I wake up in the morning, I'm not looking at my phone going, it's like, oh yeah, no calls, cool, everything's good.
Yeah, getting a good night of sleep is good, right? Especially, someone like me, I got 3 daughters, and that's, I don't need any more thing in my life to keep me up. So with that said, right, as you start thinking about it, right, as you put together all your stack, you got the backups, you got EDR, you got tool set. Tell us a little about your journey, like I think with Sly and then with Backup Radar. I think that would be really good for the audience to kind of understand
For sure.
where does Sly and Backup Radar fit in your stack, right? Because there's always a question like, well, do I only need one or the other? Where do they fit? How does it help you in your workflow?
So kind of a longer story,
Yep,
but I'll give it to you. Uh, I'm sure Sergio remembers, and you definitely remember when I started hearing that, hey, I want you guys to check this out. One thing I said, I'm not looking at it unless you got Backup Radar,
yep,
right? Like, oh, that was legit,
good.
because the last thing I need is another set of reporting, right?
Yep.
And you're like, don't worry, it's coming, and then we had it, right? So it was great. So that was a huge part of what we wanted to do, because any vendor that we have, I need them to dial into my own my tool set,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Radar is a huge part of my tool set. The magic that they do, if you're not familiar with Radar, I call it Radar, but it's Backup Radar. If you're not familiar with Backup Radar, it has things like, hey, I expected a backup to run and it didn't, right? We need to know that, because the old school way of doing notifications on failed backups is what I like to call red light, green light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Red light, I have an issue. Green light, the issue is fixed. And a lot of vendors go, oh, we totally integrate into your PSA through email. That's not an integration, right?
Mm.
Like that's just craziness.
Yep.
So the fact that you guys have direct access into ScalePad, and I can not only see my red light, green lights, right? Tickets are getting created during a red light and then they're healing during a green light. Very important to us, because we all know throughout the middle of the night, ISPs go offline. A backup or two may skip because of that reason. And but when we get in and we got the guys logging in the morning, they're going to look at the board and see, what action do I need to take? Not the days of like, and I'm not bagging on backup exec, but I'm talking like 2000s, the 90s, when we had to go check each and every customer. First off, where was backup radar back then? But that's a different problem. I don't think they were born yet. But just making sure that everything was groovy works. And now, just to bring up a little bit, portal hopping in our industry is a total nightmare, right? Some vendors, I need my company name, I need my email, I need my password, I need my MFA, right? Cool. Now I'm in their portal. Now I have to go to the device. Okay. Now I have to go proxy into the device. There's all these extra steps just to check a backup. So now Ray, who's my primary guy, he just checks his tickets. And for whatever reason, if he wants to check on the backup, he's not logging into Slide, no
Mm-hmm.
offense. He's logging into Radar, right? Because just like you saw in the demo, you can actually click through Radar to get a full history of what's going on without ever having to jump over to the portal. And at least with the Slide portal, there's no portal hopping. You log into the portal, you could just boom, 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 all from the main dashboard. You can get to all the backups you need. It keeps Ray super dialed in, and he can focus on what matters and just making sure that customers are up, backing up, and everything is groovy.
That's great. So let me see. So now in some way, give it a little bit. I think the other things, right? I always tell people, um, and this is gonna be a fun question, and then they probably get all of my partners and my team like on their feet, right? Because every single one of these webinars, we always want to talk about how everything is perfect. Everything it works exactly the way we expect it, and we're gonna say, yeah, this partnership is the most amazing thing. But the reality is that Charles, you were there since the beginning of the slide and along the side with this integration. Um, I love for you to share with the audience because we're all about transparency, right? What worked really well along the way, and what are some of the speed bump, and how does the team work together to address that for you? I know it's not a friendly question for some of my folks in the room, like, oh, we're going to open a kimono, but honestly, transparency is kind of what we've found to be the most important things. And I, by the way, I love Charles for this because I've worked with him even before here at Slide. He is going to tell me exactly what's needed, and I want all of our team to know that that's the important part of the relationship. So feel free to share away.
Well, my joke I tell a lot of vendors is, look, and everyone on this call knows, you get 10 MSPs in a room, you're going to get 10 different answers on how to do something, and 9 of the 10 are going to say, you're dumb, you shouldn't do it this way, you should do it this
Yeah.
way, you should do it this way, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
the one thing I will say is the Slide team, especially through Discord and through phone calls and things like that, has been very easy to work with. Like anybody else, you're launching a new company, you're launching a new product. There are going to be things that you hadn't necessarily come across yet,
Mhm.
right? So, like, how do we handle that? We did just. I'll give everybody I don't want to say an issue we ran into. We didn't even think about it back in the day. All of our customers were ESX, right? They were all ESX. And then fast forward to now, I didn't even realize it. I only have one, right? And they're getting rid of it any day. And so we had gotten with support because they're like, hey, we don't see an export for ESX yet. They're like, oh, it's coming in the future, whatever. But all right, no big deal. So we figured out a workaround. We were able to do a restore. Everything was groovy, right? But
Yep.
it's little things like that versus I was able to actually talk to Sergio and some of the other folks and like make a case for that. Here's why it's important, right? Versus me telling my rep, hey, you're missing a functionality you may not have thought about yet, and getting the, well, you should fill out a you should fill out an enhancement request, go to the form that nobody ever looks at, right? And you see like 20 years of feature requests that are never done. They're like, yeah, cool, that let's work on that, right? Let's solve it. There were a couple of other little reporting things, and I often joke with you and some other people that
Huh.
sometimes we brought something up saying, hey, this button I don't think is working,
Huh.
and then a couple hours later, hey,
Yeah.
refresh, oh, it's working.
Yeah.
Right. So having access to things like Discord is huge. Now I don't understand Discord too much, right? And I know enough how to send a message, right? It's like
Yeah.
Slack for kids is what I call it. But but I can get to the people I need to and be like, hey, what do I do? Or if we're running into a challenge, I don't have to like wait. I could just get that access right here, right now.
That's great. Well, that's awesome. Well, Charles, thank you so much for kind of sharing a lot of experience along the way. Any final word for the audience before I bring in the rest of the panelists and do an open Q&A?
Yes. One thing I think a lot of people really need to realize what's happening here. For those of you who are happy ScalePad customers, this is the first integration that what I call has two-way interactions. Every other vendor currently in the platform is a one-way, meaning through an API they feed data to Radar, and then they can action, like it's like, okay, yep, backup's not working, let me go jump into that portal. Oh wait, I have to factor in 19 times to get to where I need to go, right? Whereas with Radar, my guys don't even have to log into the slide portal most of the time, right? Because like if a backup fails and they get a ticket, they click the link, they get opened up in the backup Radar portal, they could just hit the backup button
Yeah.
from Radar and it triggers it back to slide. So when we're talking about profitability and making sure that our guys are doing what they need to do, look, I get it. We just saved 5 minutes on a tech's time, but if he has to do that 10 times, that's a decent amount of time. So
Well, thank you for sharing. Well, good. So
you're
let's
very
go ahead
welcome.
and let's get all of our panelists back on. I think Sergio, Tulsi, Charles, please stay on. We'd love to have you help some of the questions. And we got a special guest, Michael Fast, our CEO for the Slides. He's just fly his way into the the Q&A room. You like that?
I wasn't
Uh,
supposed to be here.
yeah. Well, he last minute he's slide his way in. So
Hey, Charles.
Tulsi, your video is on. So maybe we'll kind of kick off one of the first questions. I always like kind of the live Q&A. So I know Mike had a question very much related to where Charles ended up. So maybe we can kind of open up the mic for Mike to come in and ask this question. Is it related to the tooling, the reporting in general, how they all fit in? So Mike.
Yeah, hey, thanks for taking my question. So my MSP does not use ScalePad, and we are trying to standardize on Slide for all of our clients. Would this be a good use case for me, or is this primarily geared for MSPs who are already using ScalePad and just want to integrate Slide into it?
So I'll do this. This will be a fun one. I'll start with Charles, and then we'll go to Tulsi, and then we'll go to Michael. And you get a different point of view at the end. It's your decision, right? So
Yeah. So
Charles.
let me just say this. So we went the ScalePad route because we have like SaaS backup, and at the time we had a couple different vendors, Azure, things like that. We needed it all to roll into one platform, right? That was an us thing. You by no means need Radar to make this work, right? You still have access to the portal. You can still portal hop within the slide portal, no issues. But at some point, you may want to look at an aggregate reporting engine for all your various types of backups.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great because yeah, I'm sure if we standardize on one, I just want to make sure that the built-in slide reporting is going to be good enough, or because I use ConnectWise, I'm used to their model where it doesn't quite work, but oh, there's this third party you can pay for, and now look, it works. I just want to make sure that's not the case here.
Not the case,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Not the case.
Okay, thank you.
So Tulsi, you want to add any color to
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to add a little more color, right? One of the big things that folks typically come to us for is noise reduction. Uh, a lot of platforms out there, not to say this is slides, but a lot of platforms I personally have experience with are very noisy. You got things that creates tickets all the time in a PSC, and as a technician, guess what? You have to actually merge those things together. You need to close those things out, and practically it's a waste of time. That's really one of the big benefits I would say when it comes to backup radar, where only tickets that really need to be created are in fact created. If we had a bit of a blip, a failure arise on the screen, and all of a sudden that actually went away, well, again, backup radar can simply observe that, or it can actually could have created a ticket and it goes right back and auto close the ticket. So
Yeah.
again, it really comes down to is that this sort of problem you're dealing with as well. Reporting and single pane of glass visibility, all of those things are potentially part of different sort of use cases. I want to say the big one that sometimes we see out there is a lot of sort of noise. How do we actually bring that down back and really allow more the technicians to be a little more efficient without actually going and closing a bunch of tickets that simply should never be created to begin with?
Michael, you want to add any color to this?
Just a couple of points. First of all, thank you, Charles and Tulsi. I guess two pieces. One, right, we are currently as I like to say, our first shot out of the cannon is BCDR. We back up server workloads. We will, because we have the expertise on the staff at Slide, we will hit every other backup application that's important for MSPs. They're all on our roadmap, and we push Sergio every day on that, but it's a long race. And so for the time being, you'll probably have more than one backup vendor because of that. And so the backup radar tool is really great to manage multiple vendors and multiple platforms. Moreover, it's good with as we get closer to more vendors, like in the PSA world, right now, Backup Radar has great integrations with your PSA that are tight, and that would be helpful for you, presumably, as you standardize on Slide. And I'm very happy to hear that you plan to do that. And if you haven't had a chance to sort of take it through its paces and speak to our team and use the product, I would invite you to speak with me anytime and to give it a shot because it is worth standardizing on. So,
Thank you, Mike. We're gonna put you back. And the next set of questions is coming in. I'll just kind of go through because I know I want to be conscious of time. And by the way, for those who are not on the backup radar the product yet, wait until the end. We got a special offer for you for both on backup radar and Slide. So Sergio, this question is probably directed to you. Question related to client volume. I got some client volume that's already encrypted. How does it affect the backup, of your encryption, and what would that transition look like as if you were to decide to move to a Slide platform?
Yeah, happy to answer. So encryption should not have any impact on Slide. So especially if you're doing something like BitLocker encryption, that's totally fine. We're speaking with the live system, so it's actually pretty easy for us to back it up from that point of view.
How does that work though? If, I'm on a path of transition. This might be an area that Charles have gone through, right, as he transitioned from his prior backup vendor into Slide.
So I think one of the neatest things is that we can pre-deploy the agent, tie it to the device before the device is live, right? Which is like amazing because usually you have to wait until the box is on there, reboot it after, like customers all excited they got this box in their room and they want to use it. I got to reboot. I could pre-tag all that stuff. and we're using it mostly to back up some critical desktops and servers, but we're also backing up Azure with it. So that's kind of neat as well.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you want to double click on that,
So,
Sergio?
you want to talk a little bit about your experience and how you are managing? Because a lot of people get worried about ingress,
Yeah.
egress, Azure, unpredictable costs, etc. What is it? What is it about Slide that makes that less unpredictable and easier for you to manage?
Whatever, I mean, you guys know better. Whatever the voodoo is, it doesn't pull as much data, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, we've been running it in Azure for maybe a month or so, maybe just over closer to 2. Ingress, egress, it pops a little bit, but it's not like anything crazy. But we've successfully been able to boot up an Azure VM on a little box in the customer's office, right, to satisfy a DR test, which was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Actually, our first third-party user experienced that, and we were very happy to hear that. But that was our first instance where a third party went in and applied our application to their workload, and it was a Azure workload.
By the way, I just want to be clear, we usually don't celebrate when your customer go in the DR situation. Very rarely. But Charles was like, am I the first? I go, you're the first. We're all celebrating, but we should go back to get your customer back up. But just be clear.
Yes, we were.
Just to comment on what a little bit of that magic is, just for anybody who's curious on that side. So there's really 2 things taking place there. One is we're using a more advanced encryption compression algorithm. So our backups are able to take up a little bit less space, not only stored on the appliance, but also going over the wire. So that helps with your egress costs. The other thing is we essentially don't do full backups. Every backup we take is incremental in nature. So you never really have to worry about a backup that's just going to take up more space than it needs to. Most other backup vendors usually at one point or another, even if they claim they're not going to take a full backup, there's at some point a backup, a big enough upgrade, something happens to that environment, you'll end up taking a full backup. We're really only copying over the deltas at all times. So allows us to stay quite efficient over the wire.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna take one last question. There's one question that actually came in is quite interesting. It's related to a little bit double click down on what Charles mentioned earlier. I think Charles, you mentioned how the slide integration with Backup Radar is different than any other one you've experienced. I would love that maybe Tulsi speak a little bit about why is this unique and different, and this might also get a little about development journey together, right? With Charles, adding color to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So clearly, Backup Radar has always been that event aggregator, right? We are just bringing in metadata about the backups. But clearly, there is a need for management as well. The managers of managers, think about it from that concept, right? Backup Radar can start taking a lot of function built within the Slide API, and from within the Backup Radar console, you have the ability to execute on that. That's the sort of journey that the platform will be on. And happy to say, Slide is that first vendor as we are joining into this arena. APIs that are becoming a little more sophisticated, right? The more fundamental functions and technology you build within the API, it allows us now to actually take advantage of that within the Backup Radar console. So yeah, super thrilled. You saw that from the flyout menu. You're gonna start seeing that with other providers as well in a time to actually, as we develop the platform, make it a little more capable and so on. So don't necessarily need to jump directly into a different tool to get some of that work done. I would love to come to see the day whereby, as you work with Slide, hey, I can actually do a DR restore right from within Backup Radar, or I can actually, pop up a Samba share directly from within Backup Radar and streamline at work. Again, less consoles you're dealing with, you're simply utilizing the best of breed technology underneath the covers. And I think for the MSPs, on this call, I think that's all you care about. The technology is underneath the covers, simply doing its job. We are simply giving you a better, quicker way to actually do management.
Any other comment, Charles, Michael, Sergio, on this?
It's it's a big time saver is
Yeah.
really what it boils down to. And portal hopping, I said it before, it's a big problem in the industry, and ScalePad is just trying to help take that down for
Yeah.
us, which we appreciate.
Yeah. I'll also add some color to it. It's quite interesting because Charles kind of gave you guys the beginning of this partnership where he says you got to have back radar for us to even consider, right? And that actually led into a really interesting conversation between our founders and some of the leadership team at ScalePad. We happened to be speaking on the same fireside chat panel in an event in December, I believe it was, yeah, of last year, and we managed to get all the right people in the right room. And it was Austin McCullough, co-founder, uh, Chris Day, the CEO for ScalePad. And I said, I have this problem and I need to be solved. I have Charles Love. We have to have backup radar integration here. And that conversation was so interesting because an hour later, of great people in mind, they came up with, we got to make the best and the most unique integration for this modern backup technology in place and showcase both slide and backup radar together, which makes this partnership so unique. And I was so excited afterward. I go, also, I think I figured it out. I got the two great minds together. We're gonna do it, but guess who gets to do all the work? I do, because I was the one in the room. But it was great. This is kind of how things gets done in this. I absolutely believe in modern MSP vendor partnership. It shouldn't be, to your point, right, Charles, a ticket that goes in La La Land, a form that goes somewhere. But anyway, this is actually a great session. Thank you for all the panelists. What we're going to do is we're going to switch gear a little bit with the Q&A into the next step. There's two pieces that we want to share. One, I think Rebecca's going to fire it up a little bit survey and questions for you related to slide. You should be getting a poll shortly. In there, we would love to get your feedback for those who are attending who have not seen slide before. How do you want like the next step? We got let's slide, get us a box, let's get going, get our partnership started. Or you want to make an appointment, you want to learn more, you're going to geek out with Sergio. I'll even bring in Tosi if you want, because if you prefer his demo over Sergio, great, happy to do that. And then you're not ready, you're not ready. But the one question I didn't answer, you did ask about the drop test. We actually do have a drop test program. So the way it's going to work is if you're interested in a slide box, we do have an offer. When you switch over, you can send us your old, I call it, 1980 backup technology boxes, and we'll definitely have some fun drop test experience with them. Off building, tall building, flames, BattleBot. Extremely exciting. So you can contribute to that program. So all joking aside, like I said, if you got existing vendor there, I do believe there's a lot of great technology out there. Something to think about is that we will do some sort of trade-in program and give you some, way to kickstart it. Michael, you had something to say?
Yeah, trade in your old device and get 50% off your slide.
Yeah. Okay, he gave you the number right there. So now he's on record. So got it. Good. Okay, so with that question, for those of you that haven't answered, the next piece, we also want to share a slide here on the backup radar side of the equation. For those of you who are not a backup radar partner, the team here is, I don't know if that slide been shared yet because there's a QR code. We'll fire that up from Sergio or one of you. And essentially, it's a great offer team put together because of this partnership. For those who haven't been on background, I think Mike mentioned that he's considering it. From this offer, you can scan the QR code. You will get $50 off each of your first 3 months of Backup Radar subscription. I know Charles is like, I want that right now because he has existing. It's new customer only. Sorry, man. But you can actually call your Backup Radar rep. Maybe he will squeeze it out for you. The other thing is that this offer is valid through end of May. But again, our goal is really as the partner teams here. We want you guys, as MSP, build your best stack of tooling, have the best capability, monitor your days, and a good night of sleep, most importantly, because I'm sure some of you out there have more than $3, and I've met folks who got 5. I don't know how you ever sleep, but have at it. We want to make sure we're going to help you, give you the right tooling in place. And most importantly, if you want to have any question, join the Discord. In fact, I think Tulsi is also on that, the backup radar team's also in the same Discord. We want to have open, transparent conversation and answer any question you might have. With that said, I want to thank you everyone for joining us, and we're right on time. Thank you. We'll see you next
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
Thank you.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Bye.